Welcome to Hood Champion Boxing and Sports. In boxing, you find a way to win or you find a way to lose. Stop holding the welterweight belts hostage. Message going out to Earl Spence and Terrence Crawford. If the two of these guys aren't going to fight, and I'm telling you, these guys are on divergent paths. I'm telling you right now. But if they're not going to fight, they need to go ahead and, at least fight the mandatories. Or give up the belts, do something, because it's really frustrating seeing what's going on with these two, okay? So when you think about what's going to happen in the coming weeks and months, you got to think about these sanctioning bodies. They want their belts defended, and they want them defended against the mandatories. And I know, like a lot of you know, and I think we'd all agree, it does make sense for sanctioning bodies to overlook mandatories, to position their champion against the other champions, to unify or to go into an undisputed distinction, right? That's where what should be where the money is, that should be where the interest is, and that should be the fight to make. But my thing is, what's stopping that fight from being mandated? Okay? You're telling me that sanctioning bodies can't mandate that these guys unify? If they can come out, right, and say, hey, we're going to take this guy who's a mandatory. You guys give him a step-aside fee, or he gets no fee at all. And he'll have to wait, and we're going to allow unification to take place, or the undisputed bout to take place. And this guy who's a mandatory has a step-aside, right? Because there's a mutual agreement between two champions to come together to unify. If you're telling me they can do that and allow a mandatory to step aside, you tell me they can't come now and preclude the mandatory from stepping aside? And, actually, you tell me they can't come now and force two champions who obviously aren't looking to fight each other anytime soon and kind of force that they make the fight happen? I mean, I'm sure there's some legal ramifications, lawsuits. I'm sure they have some rules out there, but I'm not really, spun up on that. If anyone knows, definitively kind of what the rules are, then state that. When I go out there and do research on it, you got, the different, bodies out there, and they all have their own rules, and that's the other thing that is frustrating. When you go and you start reading through these different, like the WBA, WBO, IBF, they all have their rules about how often the belt needs to be, their belt in particular, has to be defended against the mandatories and all that other crap. And some are every 2 years, some are, a little bit different. But the bottom line is, when you see what's going on here with Spence and Crawford, something's got to give, okay? We saw Crawford just come out, and, he did what he did with Evander. So now he's looking to have another fight before the summer, maybe around between April and May timeframe, okay? Against who? We don't know. Earl Spence, no one knows what's going on with Earl Spence, okay? But I'm telling you what's about to happen with Earl Spence. Earl Spence is going to be creeping up on being out the ring almost a year himself. So he's going to have to get active. Now, he just showed up to the Frank Martin and Rivera press conference, and, he looked good, said just a little bit sore, but nothing serious. So we know Earl Spence doesn't complain. With everything that he's been through, Earl Spence has probably proven to be, one of, if not the most resilient boxer ever. And maybe you have to kind of compare Earl Spence to Vinny Pazienza, because for those of you who don't know who the hell Vinny Pazienza is, look up his story. Check out his story and look at what this man was able to do coming out of a car accident and the type of damage he took. Okay? So Earl Spence and Vinny Pazienza are probably two of the most resilient boxers ever. The type of damage they took to come back and resume their boxing careers, like, it's just something that wasn't going to happen. Some people may say Daniel Jacobs, him being, a guy who overcame cancer, and Darrell overcoming cancer. And I'm not trying to say what Spence and Pazienza went through is more detrimental than what Jacobs and Darrell went through. What I'm saying is, across the board, all those guys are resilient. But for me, I'm gonna go ahead and say I think Spence just may happen to be probably the most resilient boxer ever. The fact that he returned to the ring and looked the way he did, like he looked better than he looked before the accident. But at the end of the day, they're gonna have to figure it out. Okay, so when you start really thinking about who can Spence fight, all right, when you look at this, right, this is the ring. This is how the ring has everyone rack and stacked. Now we know for Earl Spence, WBC came, and a lot of people don't agree, but it is what it is. He's supposed to be fighting Keith Thurman, but if you're not concerned, or at least maybe some of you don't let this bother you the way it bothers me, but if you're not at least having a conversation saying, hey, well, why haven't they had a press conference yet? Why hasn't Keith Thurman been on the last stance with what's his name, Brian Custer? Why aren't they building up the fight between Spence Jr. and Thurman? So I think that is an excellent fight, Earl Spence and Keith Thurman. I think Keith Thurman will get up for that fight. He knows it's an opportunity for him to come and win 3 belts. Now him winning, I don't know. But I don't think he's going to get in there and just be totally outclassed. I'm just going to be honest with you. We got to still put some respect on Keith Thurman's name. Keith Thurman is a monster. But with his inactivity, man, you just have to give the edge to Earl Spence. But with the type of power he has, the type of movement he has, Earl Spence has never been knocked down from a body shot. He's never been knocked out. So to come now and say Earl Spence is going to be the first to do it, I don't know about that. But we do know that with Earl Spence and that vicious body attack, Keith Thurman is the perfect opponent for a guy like Earl Spence with the skill set he possesses. Conversely now, we know Spence Jr., no matter what any of you Spence fans says or say, Spence has been hurt to that damn chin. I don't care what you say. I watched it about 20 times the other day. I kept repeating it, man. That round, going back to where he got hit with, I think it was a right hand. The first shot that made him step back and his body just kind of waved. Like that 20 seconds from that shot, that whole 20-second segment, Spence got his ass hurt. And we've seen him get buzzed in other fights. But it's boxing. They're going to get hit. But we've seen him get clipped. But he's in such great shape that he's able to somehow push through that adversity and continue with the beatdown. But that being said, we know Keith Thurman can crack. Now, if Ugas can catch Spence and hurt him, if Porter can hurt him, if Danny Garcia can hurt him, now, these guys aren't bums at all. These guys are elite fighters. But all I'm saying is, if they can get through, why can't Keith Thurman? And Keith Thurman, my understanding, he hits harder than all of those guys. So I'm just saying, if he can touch Spence Jr., well, we may get a serious upset. But right now, I really feel Spence isn't going to fight Thurman. Okay? Who he's going to fight, I have no idea. So now you go and look at Crawford. Crawford just clipped Evanescence. But who is he going to fight next? Let me tell you. You got Ennis, Ugas. Crawford's not going to fight Ennis. I'm not sure what he's going to do. But don't be surprised if Crawford comes out and fights, damn Blair Cobb. Because Blair Cobb is calling for the fight. Blair Cobb is right now. And look, I'm going to tell you what. Y'all may be laughing at this, but I'm going to tell you right now. I would not be surprised if Terrence Crawford was able to fight, was signing to fight Blair Cobb on BLK Prime, right? I wouldn't be surprised. Now, forget the fact that Crawford, but it looks like he didn't do really well as far as his pay-per-view sales with BLK Prime. Let's just set that aside. Let's say there's still money on the table and they want to, promote another fight for Crawford, right? Still give him big money. Okay, let's just say in a perfect world, everything works out financially and they want to move forward with Crawford to do another fight. You got to look at Crawford wanting to return around April, okay? Spence has a fight within the first couple months. He's not going to be ready in April. Ennis is going to be fighting in January. He may be ready in April. He may become mandatory to Crawford, okay? Yugas, man, just getting over blurred vision and everything else. I don't know if he's going to be ready. Ortiz and Stanley Eunice are getting ready to fight next year, early next year. They may not be ready around April to get in the ring with a guy like Crawford because they're going to take some damage. You got Keith Thurman, who knows what's going on with him. He could slip in there with Crawford too. Then Evanescence, it is what it is with him. Connor Ben, hey, supposedly he's all in the clear now. He could get in the mix. Then Butiev, I don't think none of them are going to fight Butiev. Butiev is just, you got to shoot him. But the thing is this, right? All of those guys are signed to promotional outfits. There's one boxer at 147 who's not committed to anyone right now, although he's trying to renegotiate his deal and sort those promotional issues out. And this fighter has been calling for Terrence Crawford for a while. He just went and fought Terrence Crawford's stablemate, Maurice Hooker, and he beat him hands down. And I'm talking about the one and only, the world-renowned Blair the Flair Cobb. Now, for those of you out there who are laughing and you're saying, no way Crawford would fight Blair the Flair, look, why not? Okay? Blair the Flair is just coming off of, he took a loss to Rocha, got in there with Maurice Hooker. He whipped Maurice Hooker's ass, man, and I ain't gonna lie, I was very impressed with Blair the Flair Cobb. So that would be a good build-up to the fight with Terrence Crawford because, Maurice Hooker and Crawford are boys, and Cobb keeps calling out Crawford. Cobb right now is not really he's not really signed to anyone, although he's begging De La Hoya and them to sign him, extend his contract for like another 3-4 fights. But at this moment, that could be the perfect fight for Crawford. Now, if you say, no way he would fight Blair the Flair, right? Well, let's take a look and see, okay? Because we know when we look down here, let me make this a little bigger for some of y'all those of you who can't see this. Let's just glance at this, right? So let's look at the WBO first. All right, so you got Virgil Ortiz. Now, this is where, if Terrence Crawford decides to put his money where his mouth is and not fight Blair the Flair, because the WBO, the IBF, the WBC, and WBA, these guys aren't playing around. They want those belts defended. And for some reason, it looks like Spence and Crawford going two different directions. Virgil Ortiz and Stanley Eunice are about to fight. If for some reason the timeline doesn't line up to get in the ring with Crawford around April, which I don't think it is, Jerome Boots Ennis is the optimal choice for Crawford as far as someone who should bubble up to the number one spot under the WBO. Because Virgil Ortiz and Stanley Eunice are getting out there and banging all that for the WBA or whatever, man. But that to me, I would like to think that Jerron Boots Ennis would just bubble up to the number one spot for the WBO. And then the WBO would hopefully make him the mandatory, because you guys understand, just because someone's ranked number one in under a sanctioning body. That doesn't make them the mandatory, which I think is, stupid. But that's just not how that works. But if Boots Ennis becomes a mandatory, right, because he should have no problem getting through his opponent on January 7th. The fight to make is Ennis against Crawford. But I would not be surprised if somehow Crawford, there's some kind of hiccup or some kind of impediment preventing these guys from working a deal, and a guy like Blair the Flair Cobbs end up getting a shot at Terrence Crawford, okay? I just wouldn't be surprised. So once we get beyond Terrence Crawford, right, if it's not Ortiz, well, it can't be Ortiz because he's going to be busy with standing. If it's not Ennis, it could be Thurman. Conor Benton is still, this is what's crazy. Conor Benton is still in, he was taking out the rankings. He's still in the rankings, man. Conor Benton's name is still out there. Fighting in England, it's a lot of money. Eddie Hearn would have that fight in England with no problem because, the people would come out there and support. But for him trying to promote Terrence Crawford in America, that's where he would struggle. But in the UK, I think Terrence Crawford and Conor Benton sells out a stadium, no problem. Especially with Conor Benton coming back off of all the controversy and all the crap, just to see how he performs against a guy like Terrence Crawford. But if not Conor Benton, then what do we have? Alexis Rocha. That's a pretty good fight, but I don't think that's a fight we'd want to see. We already saw what happened with Evanescence. Cody Crowley. Then, Blair the Flair is there at number 9. Then Ugas. But Ugas, he's not ready. So realistically, out of these names, Blair Cobb, Giovanni Santillan, Cody Crowley, Alexis Rocha, Conor Benton, Keith Thurman, and then Ennis. There's only a couple names that really jump out at you. And those big names seem to be busy. Conor Benton, I don't think anybody really going to want to give him a shot anyway. Alexis Rocha, his name isn't really popping, but we know him, but, he's not like well known. Blair Cobb is probably a bigger name than Alexis Rocha. And that could be the fight that gets made. So, you see, I'm not just talking on my backside. I honestly think for Terrence Crawford, if he fought the number 6 guy, why can't he come and fight the number 9 guy? All right? And I'm sure once the WBO updates their rack and stack, Blair Cobb is going to bubble up some. Evanescence is going to fall off. Conor Benton may fall off. But who knows? And then that'll give Crawford, they can kind of justify why he'd be fighting a guy like Blair Cobb. But to me, I like to see Boots Ennis get that shot. Now, when you look over here at the IBF and Earl Spence, see, Earl Spence is up. He's kind of up shit creek with no paddle because, the mandatories are coming for him. The best thing for Earl Spence to do is the WBC is putting serious pressure on Earl Spence. They're putting so much pressure on Earl Spence. Part of me almost feels sorry for Earl Spence, you know what I'm saying? Because he just does not want to fight. Let me make this a little bit bigger for y'all, right? He just does not want to fight Keith Thurman. He does not want to fight Keith Thurman at all. But when you look at what's going on here with the WBC, Virgil Ortiz, if he fights Keith Thurman, or if somehow he's able to dodge the Keith Thurman bullet, right? Virgil Ortiz is fighting Stanley Eunice. Oh, that's for the WBA. So you could say Keith Thurman, he doesn't get the shot with Spence because of politics or whatever. Virgil Ortiz is already busy with Stanley Eunice. The next person in line. Who's the next person in line? It's Jerome Boots Ennis. All right, Earl Spence already fought Ugas. And Thulanane and Bingi, Cowdy, I don't even know who Cowdy Crowley is. I'm going to be honest with you. And then Kavaliauskas, he can fight. Abel Ramos, Manos Barros, Rashidi Ellis. But out of those names, the person who Earl Spence should be fighting, if it's not Keith Thurman, January, February next year, really February, March next year, it should be Boots Ennis. Keith Thurman or Boots Ennis, man. Okay? That's what it should be. So Boots Ennis is in a great position. You look under the IBF, the number one to Earl Spence is Boots Ennis. Now, we already talked about the WBA. So you got Ortiz and you have Stan Eunice. Stan Eunice is the regular welterweight champion for the WBA. Ortiz is the number one. So they're mixing it up right now. But look, they're going to be busy. So if Earl Spence, decides he's not fighting till March or April or whatever he ends up doing, he's not fighting Keith Thurman, whatever Earl Spence ends up doing, look who's the number two and who's not going to be busy after January 7th. Jerome Boots Ennis. Okay? So what the person who's in the best position, in my opinion, is Jerome Boots Ennis and then Keith Thurman. But I just don't think Earl Spence really wants to fight him. I just think he does not want to fight Keith Thurman. So people, I'm going to tell y'all to hold tight. And we may see Jerome Boots Ennis finally get in there with either Spence or with Crawford. And I'll tell you this. I think Jerome Boots Ennis would actually fight Spence. Or Spence would fight Ennis quicker than Crawford would fight Ennis. I'm just being honest with you. Spence doesn't seem to care. And Spence seems to really want to fight top guys. He wants a challenge. He wants to prove himself. Look at the resumes. You know what I'm saying? And then between Spence and Crawford, just look at it. In the last however many years, who have they fought? Matter of fact, you can kind of look at it by weight division. When people are talking about Crawford as the pound for pound, look, he can fight, but when you look at who he's fought in the last, I should have copy and pasted that portrait that I have, but if you look at who he's fought in the last 3 years, or let's just say the last 24 months, since everybody wants to call him the pound for pound, then look at who Canelo fought in the last 24 months and how many times he fought in the last 24 months. Okay, so to me, there's no argument about who's the pound for pound best right now. It's Canelo, okay? And it doesn't matter that he lost. It doesn't matter the performance against Triple G. Look at the man's resume. Okay, so Crawford is still a bad boy. I'm not downplaying him, but we're going to talk about pound for pound. And you just got to look at the activity, the opponents. And, Canelo's still the top dog, Even when you look at Haney and his accomplishments are outstanding. Look at just how often he's fought in the last 24 months. Look at Jermell Charlo. Now, he's a bad boy, but when you really start to rack and stack him, you got to put Canelo up there. You got to put Jermell Charlo up there. And Terrence Crawford definitely belongs up there in the pound-for-pound rankings, but he's not, to me, he's not number one or number two. I don't think so. But he can definitely get people like me who think that he's a phenomenal fighter. He's one of the pound-for-pound best. But to really cement his position as maybe the pound-for-pound best in boxing, he's got to fight a Boots Ennis. He's even a Keith Thurman. Spence didn't get Keith Thurman. Keith Thurman is the perfect opponent for Terrence Crawford. Spence mixed it up with Garcia and Porter. Okay, Thurman's still floating around out there. Crawford, go out there and pluck him. Go out there and diffuse him. But I just don't think it's going to be that easy. Because Thurman is active. Thurman's got power. Thurman can fight. And that's what we need to see Crawford in. We need to see him in a fight like that. Now, if he can make Thurman, although Thurman is inactive, look like how he made Evanesian, Crawford may be up to something. But he still may not get the credit he deserves because they're going to say Keith Thurman's inactive. But if Crawford can fight Ugas, if Crawford can get in there and fight, Boots Ennis and, pretty much have his way, people are going, I'm telling you, there won't be any more argument about who's the real top dog pound for pound. Because Thurman's a good win. Boots Ennis I still think Boots Ennis, he passes the eye test. No doubt about that. But we haven't seen what he does when he gets hit, if he goes through adversity, if he gets hurt. We got to see what kind of cloth is he cut from. Because that matters, man. When you look at all the greats, I've done videos on this. I've had dialogue with some of the guys here in the community. Look, man, all the greats have gotten hurt, and they've come back after being hurt, and they represented themselves well, and either knocked the opponent out or definitely won by unanimous decision. So I think for me, we got to just see Boots Ennis passes the eye test, but how is he going to respond when he actually gets hurt? So now that we've looked at all that, and we've kind of have a better understanding of what's going on in boxing right now, for Errol Spence and Terrence Crawford, they start pushing these mandatories. I'm telling you right now, the mandatories that the name that should get pushed as the mandatory, if you just look in here, let me make this small again, right? It should really be Boots Ennis, man. Boots Ennis, and then the winner of Stanley Eunice and Virgil Ortiz. That's what you're gonna have. Crawford and Spence should be fighting one of those guys. I think Spence will fight early next year. Not sure who he's gonna fight, but then after that, he should probably go into a fight with either Virgil Ortiz or Stanley Eunice. For Terrence Crawford, he just finished a fight. After Boots Ennis gets through his guy in January, Crawford and Boots Ennis are the ones who should be fighting next year around April or May. Like, the timelines, they just, they match. That's the perfect, like, if when people are trying to make excuses, say, well, there's a person, they need 4 months to train, 3 months to train, and they start talking about timeline and trying to use that as an alibi to not fight someone. There's no excuse for Terrence Crawford to not fight Ennis around April. And for Errol Spence, there's no excuse for him to get in a fight, Stanley Eunice or Virgil Ortiz before the summer, especially if Errol Spence fights in February or March. So everything kind of lines up. So for me and these sanctioning bodies, I do hope they push the mandatories, because Crawford and Spence, since they don't want to fight each other, put them in the fights that make them uncomfortable. Now, I will say I think Crawford is a bad boy. I think Spence is a bad boy. But I think Spence would jump at the opportunity to fight any of these killers quicker than Crawford. Because when you look at their resumes, and, maybe Top Rank prevented Crawford from mixing it up with some of these heavy hitters. Maybe he was on the wrong side of the road. Maybe all of that had something to do with it. But maybe it doesn't. But right now, that should not matter. What should matter is Crawford's a free agent, can pick and choose and do what he wants. It's just if these fighters promoters are willing to work with him and BLK Prime and have the fights on BLK Prime. You see, that's going to be the hiccup. So I don't know what Crawford's move is. He did say that he's open to doing a 1 or 2 fight deal with a different promotional outfit, but he doesn't want anything long term. So BLK Prime, probably something he did, go on and work with someone else, get the fight that he wants, 1 or 2 fights he wants, and then be done, be a free agent again, and go back to BLK Prime. So I don't know what exactly Crawford's going to do, but I know that he does not want to be confined to one promotional outfit. He wants that freedom to do what he to do what he pleases, and you can't fault him for that. So that being said, those sanctioning bodies, look at all this movement going on in the welterweight division. It's happening for a reason. Remember Mauricio Suleiman, several months ago, he came out. He's hosting conferences with other sanctioning bodies saying, look, we should be able to talk and discuss which one of our belts the champion, a unified champion, should be defending first. I shouldn't be mandating him to fight my WBC guy, and you shouldn't be mandating that he fights the WBA guy at the same time, because it's impossible for him to do. Now, you go to purse bid, I go to purse bid, he's got to make a decision. So he ends up relinquishing one of the belts. Like, that's not fair. So they do need to sit down and meet and have these conversations with all the stakeholders and get on the same page. There needs to be some explicit communication and agreements made, and then go from there. But I don't know if they're doing that, but I do know for a fact that this is something that Mauricio Suleiman had tabled, and he was taking the lead on it because the WBC belt and the WBC organization, although it's an opinion, I would go on to say that I think most people feel they're the most prestigious boxing organization out there. And hopefully they can sort all that out. But I do know when you see movements like this happening with certain fights being ordered, let me tell you, that means there were talks happening with key stakeholders, key decision makers in boxing, in these sanctioning bodies, who are sitting down saying, okay, this is what the landscape looks like. So let's see if we can change it up a bit. And that's what they're doing. They're changing it up a bit, and they're trying to give us the fights that we want. But, sometimes you see stuff like with Shakur Stevenson and Pitbull Cruz where they'll order a fight and they end up not doing it, So I don't know if they can make it something to where they're obligated, but I can't see why they can't. But for Spence and Crawford, don't expect those guys to fight at all. Not each other. Don't expect them to fight each other. Derek James just did an interview, but he was saying he's not too confident that fight's going to happen. I just really think a bridge was burned when Crawford walked away from that Spence fight. Because Spence was already training. He had been training, this was like October. He had been training a couple months already. Just getting in shape and staying sharp. Trying to get ready for a full training camp and to fight in November. So they were a bit deflated, but they said they just had to push, and life goes on. But a bridge was definitely burned when Crawford just totally walked away from the undisputed fight with Earl Spence. And I've listened to Crawford. I've done videos on this. I kind of understand with his inexperience, ignorance to the whole process. I can understand how he ended up taking the fight he took, especially if he really got that $10 million, which right now I'm not sure if he got the full amount. And that's the thing when people come out and say so many different things. I'm telling you, I don't know. But I'm just going to say he got paid good money to have half a fight, and now his family is in a better position, okay? He didn't want to wait. And I could understand his concerns, but at the same time, another 2 months to fight for undisputed, to fight for maybe 30, 40 million, I'm just saying, I would have preferred to see that. But when you look at how he performed in it with Evanescence, I think we can kind of understand, like I said in another video, why Crawford chose to come out here and have a fight to kind of knock the ring rust off. Because if he would have waited 2 more months and just try to get the ring rust off in sparring and go in there with that monster, Earl Spence, yeah, Crawford wouldn't have fared well, in my opinion. So that being said, hopefully everything that I just shared with you, a lot of it is fact, a lot of it is opinion, a lot of it is just kind of educated dialogue. Hopefully I'm wrong. Hopefully the sanctioning bodies say, you know what, let's kind of take another shot at this. Let's mandate that these two fight, because they can justify it. These guys can do what the hell they want, and put them in a position where they put up or shut up. And then we get to actually see the fight happen. But if not, I'm telling you, look at the logistics. Pieces are moving already to put guys in position to be the mandatories to Spence and Crawford. And it looks like it's going to be Boots Ennis, or it's going to be Ortiz, the winner of Ortiz and Stanionis. Keith Thurman like he's about to get left out in the cold. But then again, who knows what's going to happen. Change to the change, right? But that being said, y'all keep cool. Shout out to the veterans. Hopefully we get this fight between Spence and Crawford. But don't hold your breath. And I'm in the breeze.